and welcome back to the second episode of the Orsa Knits Podcast. I've been a little bit delayed in filming this one just because I've been so indecisive about my most recent yarn order. I find myself scrolling for hours and hours and hours looking at all of the different colours and the different fibres that I could make something with, that I do get a little bit delayed. So I put in that order last, I think it was Thursday night, and I kind of hoped it was going to come before the weekend, but unfortunately it wasn't until Monday that it came. So I just wanted to make a bit of progress on my whips so that I could show you what I've been doing. So settle in, grab yourself a drink. I've got an Aperol Spritz with me, which is one of my absolute favourite spring-summer cocktails. If you have ever been to Italy and you wondered what the fluorescent orange drinks that everybody was having in the summer was, it is this. Aperol Spritz, Prosecco, Aperol, which is a little bit of an odd, slightly herbal tasting liqueur, but very nice and very refreshing, and fizzy water, and a little bit of orange. I've almost finished mine, but I will be slurping it along while I talk to you about my projects. First, I will tell you what I am wearing today. The weather has been a little bit cooler. It is very hot now in Rome, sort of 26 plus most days, so my jumpers are not seeing much use. But it did dip a little bit with a little bit of rain recently, so I have got out this, which is my really gorgeous Cumulus blouse by Petite. It was one of the first jumpers I initially made when I progressed on to jumper and sweater knitting. This was after my Stockholm slipover that I mentioned last time, and it just taught me so much about knitting full-on garments. I will be forever in the sort of debt of this jumper. And even though it was one of my early ones and I made so many mistakes, I do actually wear it all the time, and it's one of my all-time favourite pieces that I've actually made. But yeah, it's a very simple looking top. I will insert some images of it up close so you can see it a little bit more clearly. It has a pretty V-neck and then simple body going down, and what I did here to enhance the fit of my particular one is I took it in a little bit at the waist and then I expanded it a little bit at the hips, because most knitting patterns, I find they only really give you the measurements for the bust. Now that might work for some people who find that the bust is similar or corresponds to the size of the hips, but for me I am a little bit more sort of hourglass pear shaped, and therefore if the bust measurement is one size, it will fit me very nice and snug up at the bust and look really good, but then it will just be so tight around my hips it will just look really, really awful. So yeah, this Cumulus blouse by Petite I had to modify a bit, and it was the first time I ever modified anything. It was the first proper long sleeve jumper I made, so I was a little bit nervous about it. But I do think that those small modifications, so lengthening it, taking it in at the waist and then extending it at the hips just to make it a little bit bigger, that has really made this piece extra wearable for me. I don't love really, really cropped, really short jumpers. I wish I could wear them, but because I am a little bit more on the pear-shaped side, I don't like bringing too much attention to the thigh region, because it's not the most flattering fit on me. However, this blouse is really lovely. I knit it in one strand of grey alpaca silk and then one strand of this light blue kid silk, and it's really, really soft. I mean, you can see, I hope, on the camera just how fluffy it is, and that's only one strand of kid silk. And it just looks really, really gorgeous. I love the way that the fabric drapes because of the fact that it does have the silk in it. It makes it really flowy and very breezy. Just a really, really beautiful classic piece. Now, the mistake that I made is actually, the biggest one is on the sleeves. So these are finished with a lovely I-cord bind off, which looks really pretty. The I-cord is also worked around the neckline, and of course it was the first time I ever worked an I-cord bind off, and I thought it was one of the most difficult things I'd ever done in my life. I struggled through it on all of the different bits, just absolutely hating doing it. I think I should probably have searched for a couple more videos to fully grasp the concept in my brain, but no, I didn't do that. I just went into it after watching one and thought, yeah, I know how to do it. And I just really disliked doing the I-cord. And so I got to the end, and rather than looking for a video on how to seamlessly put together the two bits of I-cord, like when you finish the cuff, you have to sew together the two bits, I just sewed them together very quickly and very roughly, and it just didn't look good. I mean, you could see a clear stop and kind of line here and a bump where I'd just sewn them together. It's not here now because after a week of wearing this and feeling just a bit disappointed about the ugly look of my rushed sewing, I finally unpicked it and I redid it, so it's almost, I mean very nearly, a seamless sort of connection from that I-cord to this bit. Other than the I-cord, the big mistake that I made was actually not working any decreases on the sleeves. So they have this kind of billowy effect, which is quite cute actually, but is not what was initially intended in the pattern. This was me at my most impatient and just being, quite frankly, ridiculous, not even reading the instructions through the whole time once. But yeah, I skipped half a page of decreases for the sleeves and ended up, rather than with a fitted sleeve like that, which is nice, I ended up with this. But I kind of feel this effect is quite cool. Maybe it makes the garment look even more relaxed and unique, so I'm actually not unpleased with it. It does get a lot of wear, so no complaints there. And the colours that I chose are directly sort of inspired by the colour that she used in her one. If you go to her website, you'll see she uses this lovely light blue, very similar to this, and I just thought it looked really sweet, so I decided to make that. Now, talking about being inspired by the colours that pattern designers use, I have started a whip, which I'm very excited about, in the colour that was initially shown on the pattern. And this is the new and very sweet Camisole No. 4, yeah, I believe it's number 4, by My Favourite Things Knitwear. I'll hold it up for you. Do forgive all of the strands and bits of string. I had to do, the pattern tells you to do a provisional cast on so that you can just slip these off and knit the sleeves. But yeah, this is my progress so far. It looks, at the moment, a little bit like a knitted bikini, which my boyfriend thinks is quite odd. But when it's finally done, it should be a lovely and quite intricate looking camisole. I'll show you up close so you can see some of the detail. It's very pretty and very delicate, and something really lovely about this knit is that it actually looks much more complicated than it is. I initially thought this would be the more complex pattern that I would do, something a little bit fiddly for me to concentrate on when I'm not knitting my bigger sort of stockinette type pieces. But it's really quite simple once you get into it and you understand how the repeats of the sort of broken rib type stitch are worked. And just, yeah, simple, lovely, elegant, and it should be nice and breezy. Now it's getting really quite hot here in Rome. And this one is knit in one strand of fingering weight yarn from Knitting for Olive. This is pure silk, so 100% silk, which feels very luxurious to be knitting with. But what's really great about this pattern is it only actually calls for 2 balls. So these are 50-gram balls, and I think, I'm not sure how many meters, I think around 240 meters, 250, somewhere near there. So you do get quite a lot for one ball, and 2 balls is enough to finish my whole camisole. So I thought I would treat myself and get something a little bit more fancy for making my camisole. And the silk should be really nice and cool. The texture is really quite odd. I'll show you a close-up. It's kind of strange to knit with. I would describe the feeling of it as something quite similar to a kind of twine. It's very, very strong. If I pull it, it doesn't rip. I've tried pulling it really, really hard just to see, out of curiosity, how delicate I had to be when knitting this, and it is extremely strong. However, when you look at the ends that I'll show you right here, so this is the end on my camisole, you can see the threads, they do split, and they are just 3 strands of silk which have been spun together. So yeah, a very interesting texture. I have knit several things with silk blend, but I've never used 100% silk. So it's quite a luxurious and special piece, actually. And I'm very excited to see how it turns out. I think it will be really cool. I find this fabric already has nice drape. I mean, it's very difficult to see here just with these little booby triangles. But it is drapey. You can feel that it's going to be cool. When I hold it against my skin, it's weightless and light and just very, very lovely. Alright, now moving on to whip number 2. This one I am really, really happy with so far. I saw it, it's another Petite knit, surprise, surprise. I saw it and I immediately knew, oh my goodness, I simply must cast on one of these. And it is her newly released Friday tee. I will, as always, put links to everything in my description below so that you can check out the work of the designers that I'm looking at this week. But yeah, I mean, this is such a lovely piece. I'll give you a close look. I haven't got that far. I am, however, making this and the camisole in fingering weight yarn, so bear that in mind. I've been working on this for a couple of days now. So the first day when my yarn arrived, I just cast on this collar, which is folded over and sort of double thickness. So really, really nice and stretchy and really nice and thick. This is a feature that I just really adore in a lot of patterns. I think that the double collar just makes things look really, really polished when they're done. And yeah, it just makes it a lot more practical. It won't stretch out of shape. It will always look crisp. It is knit with these 2 lovely, creamy, very me shades of Drops Flora again. Now, I chose Drops Flora because, I mean, I mentioned it last time how much I love it and how affordable it is. It really, really is a bargain yarn. But I chose this one again just because it's so soft and lovely. It's fingering weight, it's really, really good value. And I wanted something that was wool because I wanted to be able to wear this kind of year round. I mean, maybe not in the hottest days of summer, but definitely spring and autumn, layered, maybe with a blazer. But I also wanted that softness from the alpaca because I do find that sometimes wool, it doesn't irritate me too much. I'm not very, very sensitive or anything, but sometimes this region, kind of right here, it can get a little bit red and a little bit sensitive. That's even with mohair actually. So I'm wearing this now and I've got a camisole underneath, so hopefully that will stop it from tickling me too much. But I did find one day I wore another jumper that is completely just 2 strands of mohair and silk, and when I took it off, I had been itching a little bit because I was feeling it right around here. When I took it off, I had a red triangle, like bright red, right here. So yeah, a little bit sensitive, not very sensitive, but a little bit. So yeah, hopefully the alpaca in this will actually counterbalance that, because my experience with alpaca has been, it's just so soft, it's lovely. It does stretch quite a bit, that's the only issue I guess with alpaca, but the softness, if I want to make something for somebody and I want it to be really, really soft and snuggly and lovely, I will probably choose alpaca. So this is also a broken rib. Now, I didn't actually think about this when I ordered my yarns for these two projects. I just saw them, I fell in love with the patterns on Instagram, I thought, oh my goodness, yes, I have to make them. And then when I opened up the patterns and I started looking at the instructions to read them over, because yes, I am reading over the instructions in full now before I start, thank goodness. So yeah, reading them over, I noticed that they were both in a broken rib. Now, yeah, not my intention, but I have to say, I really like the effect of the broken rib. It creates this very strange texture to a garment that makes it both, I don't know, light, airy, but it also feels kind of solid and put together. It's very hard to describe, and I suppose because it's in this broken rib, it will also stretch quite a bit, so hopefully it will be flattering when I've got it on, and it will go with a lot of different things with any type of trousers that I want to pair it with. But I am a little bit of a masochist, I think, at the moment with my knitting. Everything is on tiny needles. These are 3mm. So yeah, knitting a whole jumper, short sleeve jumper, on 3mm needles, the collar was on 2.5s, it's a lot. It takes a long time and progress is super slow going. However, I think that the finished look will be really crisp and really, really polished and worth that little bit extra effort. I have, however, you might have noticed when I was showing you earlier, made a little bit of an error, a bit of a happy mistake, because I don't hate the way that it looks, and it is at the back of the garment. But yeah, here you might be able to see, instead of rib all the way down, you've got a few rows of moss stitch. Now yes, this is technically an error and it is my fault, but I did become a little bit confused, I will say, when I was reading the pattern. At this point, she doesn't just tell you to follow the rib pattern. There are specific instructions, and I think at one point I must have just got really confused and made that mistake. But I don't hate the way it looks. I don't really think it's actually that noticeable from far away. I mean, there is a slight difference in texture, but nobody will see it, so I have long hair, it will cover it up. I think it's fine. And there's no way, like absolutely no way at all, that I am going to unpick loads and loads and loads and loads of rows of this broken rib on 3mm needles and in fingering weight yarn. It's just not going to happen. So I have learned, rather than to feel bad about my mistakes, to simply accept them and to keep going, because if I faffed about with correcting every single mistake that I make, now I'm not talking about big mistakes that would change the look entirely, but small mistakes that I don't think anybody will notice. If I faffed about with them and took them out every single time, I would never have a finished piece. I mean, this jumper wouldn't be finished. 99% of the things I've made have tiny mistakes in them. But does anybody notice? No, they don't. At least not that they tell me. So, that's that. Alright, so now for my only finished object from the last couple of weeks. That's a bit rubbish, I know, but I've had delays, so I'm trying not to beat myself up about not getting that much done. I need to enjoy the knits, and I can't do anything if I'm too indecisive to select my yarn. So, but yeah, these are the socks that I was about to start, or maybe had just started in my last video, which are the Everyday Socks by Petite Knit. And you can see they're a very cute stripe. So yeah, I am quite addicted to anything that has stripes on it. My wardrobe is absolutely full of stripy things, t-shirts, stripy jumpers, my coat has stripes in it, all of it, stripy socks. I just love them. I find I can throw on something with stripes in it, and I feel like it makes every outfit look a little bit more chic, sort of a little bit Parisian, and I just really like that. So I wanted to make stripy socks, and as I mentioned before, I was a little bit disappointed with the pattern because the the images show this lovely pair of socks with quite dainty little stripes really, and I just had no idea how to recreate them. So I ended up with these really quite thick stripes. Now, I'm not saying that they don't look nice, they are quite cute and classic, and I do actually really like them when they're on my feet, but it's just not what I had set out to make. And I would have really loved if the pattern had included the instructions for the stripe placement, just so that I could imitate it and get that perfect sort of tiny striped pair that I want. Anyway, I might try and remake them because I do really like the construction of the heel. Now, in the past, I had only ever done sock construction where you knit the heel flap and then you pick up stitches to join it in. So yeah, I don't know what the official term for that is, but if you know, you know. This one, on the other hand, is shaped using short rows. So yeah, it certainly makes for a simpler knit. I will say that these are much easier to make than the heel flap type, and they also give a finished look that I would say is a little bit closer to a store-bought sock. However, because this is all stockinette, I'm curious to see exactly how long it will last. I will update you on how these do when I wear them. We'll see. Fingers crossed they don't just disintegrate as soon as I wear them, because that would be a couple of days of knitting on very tiny needles down the drain. A little bit sad, but I do have the extra yarn so I could darn them. Another thing, a mistake that I made on these was with the striping, and it was really, really good practice for knitting my stripy Friday tee that I'm making now. Now, on her website, she includes the instructions on how to minimise the jog. Now, I don't really have much of a jog on this pair, but unfortunately what I do have is that slight bit of laddering when I pull them. Yeah, there you can see it. A little bit of laddering and a little bit of a jog when I pull them like that. Now, this is the first one that I made where I was following one type of anti-stripe jog instructional video. This one, I kind of caught the floats along like I would if I was doing colour work, and it just didn't work the same way as doing it this way. Now with this one, there you can really see there's hardly anything, it's quite smooth, and then when I pull them, you don't really see anything. You might see a tiny bit, but there's nowhere near the ladder that there was in the first one. So this one I'm really, really happy with. And what I did for this was just maybe about halfway down, I twisted the colour that I wasn't using around. So here I've got my two strands, and I just took that ball that I wasn't using, twisted it around, and then pulled it a bit so that it held onto that yarn as I worked the stripe going down. And that technique, which I know I had done before in a hat, and it had worked, so I don't know why I changed my mind and did something else, but I did. But yeah, that technique was really good. And I also made sure to tighten up the stitches as well when I started a new round. So just squishing the first stitches of a new round a little bit tighter than I normally would, and pulling them out a little bit so that they would bunch together a bit to compensate and hide that ladder. So yeah, I'm quite happy with these. I'll do a up close of them on my feet so you can see. And yeah, I would recommend this pattern, especially to somebody who has never done a short row heel sort of in the sock like this, but who has only ever knit down a heel flap and then picked up stitches, because it is easy, and I feel like I could adapt it to make it even stronger as well here. Maybe try and add some sort of slip stitch section to strengthen and reinforce the back. Come back next week and you'll see what I've made with the leftovers of my yarn from these. Probably another pair of socks, maybe a colour work pair, not stripes, maybe stripes, I have no idea. The last segment of the podcast for today is, I guess, acquisitions, you might call it. I would just say more yarn that I got in my yarn order that I'm going to turn into a shawl. That's what this segment is going to be called. And yeah, I have tried more knitting for Olive, because honestly I've been looking at their colours for years now, and I had never tried them, and I had really wanted to, but there wasn't previously a yarn shop near me that I ordered them from. I'm sure that there is. I mean, when I was in the UK, I know that there are people who stock Knitting for Olive, but I noticed the yarn shop that I wanted to get some stuff from had Knitting for Olive here, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to go for it now. And the colours are just to die for. I mean, really gorgeous. When I say I was staring at the colours for hours and hours and hours, not being able to decide what to get, I am referring directly to the Knitting for Olive Merino. It is a 100% merino yarn, and it is just really soft. The feel of it so far is lovely. It's quite bouncy, and I hope that it will knit up how I'm dreaming it will. And the project that I'm making out of all of this lovely Knitting for Olive Merino is the really gorgeous Scout Shawl by Florence Spurling, I think her name is. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but I love her work. I'll link her Instagram and you'll see the Scout Shawl. It's stunning, and some of her other stuff. She's so playful with texture and with colour, and yeah, I'm in awe. I look at her stuff and I think, my goodness, it's just gorgeous. And this shawl, as soon as I saw it, I was really taken aback. I was like, oh my goodness, yes, I have to make this. This is gorgeous. I haven't seen anything quite like it. I will put pictures so that you can get a sense of what I mean. Just really special. And I hope a bit of a challenge as well with colour work, because I do like to be constantly learning when I'm making something, and I haven't yet made a big challenging colourwork shawl, so I'm really thrilled at the prospect of it. Now, if you are familiar with the Scout Shawl at all, you'll know that you have to select 5 colours. So you start with a base neutral, which for me is going to be Nordic Beach, this sandy shade. And then you choose 2 different colour families which are going to bounce off or contrast each other, and I went for yellows and pinks. So for the pinky red family, I chose this burgundy and this light pink. I'm going to use the light pink on the outside just like she does on hers, because I think it looks really pretty, and yeah, I just really like it. And to bounce off of those, we're going to have our yellow family. So yeah, this mushroom rose and this lovely caramel yellow. She uses greens alongside her pinks, but I wanted to go for something which was, I guess, a little bit more me. I don't tend to use that much green in my knitting, and I knew I was going to have probably about half of these balls left over, so I did want to have something that would use up the scraps. And I thought, if I have green, I just don't really know what I'll do with it. I mean, saying that, I am of course making a green project this week already, but it's just a different shade, and I wasn't sure, I just wasn't sure what I was going to do. But with these colours, I'm pretty certain that I'll find something I can make with them. And I think that they just go really lovely with these. I think that this will be a really interesting combination, and I hope that it will meet my big expectations, and I hope that I can pull it off, because I really like knitting colour work. I think the colour work is so rewarding when you start to see a pattern forming with your yarn. It's just a really amazing experience, and yeah, I hope that this will be okay. There is quite a lot for me to learn. I've never purled during colour work, so that is going to be a little bit of a challenge for me. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed the episode today. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for supporting my channel and continuing to show an interest. And if you're new, then I would love it if you hit like if you like this video, and if you subscribed. Every new subscriber is amazing to me. I still find it crazy that people are actually interested in the little projects that I make here at home, but I love sharing them with you, and it's just really great to have people to talk to about all of my crafting projects. Upcoming very soon is going to be me dyeing a few things. So what I haven't shown you here, because I have it tucked away in a cupboard somewhere, is I got a few balls of just plain white yarn, and in the next week or two my stash of onion skins is going to have grown to such a size that I will finally be able to boil them up and dye that white yarn, which I'm really, really excited about. I've seen other people dyeing things and I think it just looks like so much fun, and the shades that people are able to achieve with hand-dyed yarns when they do them at home, it's just something really special. And yeah, I'll try and document that for you and show you how it goes. Hopefully it doesn't stink up my whole kitchen with the onion skins, but we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, thank you so much for watching my video today. I hope that you have a great weekend, and yeah, keep knitting. Bye!